Have you ever felt like the ground beneath you just vanished, leaving you falling into a void where the people you thought would always be there suddenly turned away? That's exactly what happened to me when my family, my own flesh and blood, shut me out after my divorce, as if I'd become a stranger overnight. The pain of losing my marriage was bad enough, but losing the only support system I'd ever known, that cut deeper than I could have imagined. But here's the kicker. In the ashes of that betrayal, I stumbled upon a new kind of family, one I never expected, and it changed everything I thought I knew about love and belonging. I'm still piecing myself together, grappling with the hurt, the loneliness, and the surprising hope that started to bloom in the most unlikely places. This isn't just a story about being cast out. It's about heartbreak, resilience, and discovering that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up when you're at your lowest. Stick with me as I unravel the raw, messy journey of losing everything I held dear and finding something, or someone, worth fighting for. You won't believe how this unfolded, and I'm desperate for your thoughts on whether I've truly found my place or if I'm just clinging to a fragile illusion. My name's Ethan, and I'm 38, living in a small, weathered apartment in Portland, Oregon, where the rain seems to mirror the gloom I've carried for the past 2 years. I work as a freelance graphic designer, mostly from home, hunched over my laptop in a cluttered corner of my living room with a view of the gray Willamette River snaking through the city. Portland's got this artsy, laid-back vibe with its coffee shops on every corner and moss-covered bridges. But for me, it's been a backdrop to some of the darkest chapters of my life. I grew up in a tight-knit family just outside the city, in a suburb called Beaverton, where my parents, my older sister, and I shared Sunday dinners, backyard barbecues, and a bond one thought was unbreakable. I married my college sweetheart, Sarah, at 27, full of dreams about building a life together, maybe a house in the suburbs, a couple of kids, the whole American dream package. But after 8 years, our marriage crumbled under the weight of unspoken resentments and growing apart, and the divorce finalized 2 years ago, leaving me hollowed out and alone. I never imagined that losing Sarah would mean losing my family, too. But that's exactly what happened, and the sting of their rejection still burns every single day. The emotional conflict started the moment I told my family about the divorce. I'd driven out to my parents' house on a drizzly October evening, the kind where the air smells like wet leaves and regret, expecting their support, or at least a shoulder to lean on. I sat at their worn oak dining table, the same one where we'd carved pumpkins as kids, and poured out my heart. How Sarah and I had tried counseling, how we'd fought to save it, how the end still felt like a failure I couldn't shake. I braced myself for tough love, maybe some disappointment, but what I got was worse. Coldness. My mom, who'd always been my rock, looked away, her lips tight, muttering something about how I should have worked harder to keep my vows. My dad, usually the quiet one, shook his head and said divorce wasn't our way, as if I'd betrayed some sacred family code. My sister, Jenna, who I'd always been close to, didn't even show up. She texted later that she was too busy to deal with my drama. It was like I'd become a disappointment they couldn't bear to look at, a stain on the family name they wanted to erase. That night, driving back to my empty apartment with the windshield wipers slapping against the rain, I felt a loneliness so heavy it was like a physical weight on my chest, a realization that the people I'd counted on most had turned their backs when I needed them most. The weeks that followed were a blur of isolation and self-doubt, each day blending into the next as I tried to make sense of their rejection. I'd lie awake at night, the hum of the city outside my window a constant reminder of how disconnected I felt, replaying every family memory I could muster, searching for clues I'd missed. I thought about childhood camping trips in the Columbia River Gorge, where Dad taught me to fish and Mom laughed as Jenna and I splashed in the icy water. Were those bonds always conditional, waiting to snap under the first sign of failure? I remembered the way they'd rallied around Jenna when her engagement fell apart years ago, how they'd comforted her, blamed her ex, made her feel safe. Why was I different? Was it because I was the son, expected to man up and fix things? Or because Sarah had charmed them so much that they blamed me for letting her go? The unfairness gnawed at me, a bitter mix of anger and grief, as I wondered if I'd ever been truly seen by them, or if I'd just been playing a role, perfect son, perfect husband, until I couldn't anymore. I stopped calling, stopped texting, and they didn't reach out either, a silent agreement to let the distance grow, and with every passing day, the ache of their absence carved a deeper hole in me. Portland became both my prison and my escape during those months. I'd walk through the Pearl District on gray mornings, past trendy lofts and murals splashed with color, feeling like a ghost among the hipsters sipping their lattes and the joggers braving the drizzle. I'd sit in Powell's books for hours, hiding in the stacks with a coffee gone cold, sketching aimlessly in my notebook. Angry scribbles for the betrayal, soft lines for the nostalgia I couldn't shake. The city's quirks, like the food carts at Pioneer Square or the quirky Keep Portland Weird vibe, used to make me smile, but now they just highlighted how out of place I felt, how I'd lost my anchor in a world that kept spinning without me. I threw myself into work, taking on more design projects than I could handle, not for the money but to fill the void, to drown out the quiet of my apartment where every creak of the floorboards reminded me of Sarah's absence, of family gatherings that no longer included me. I'd scroll through old photos on my phone late at night. Thanksgiving at Mom's, my wedding day with Jenna as maid of honor, and the memories were a double-edged sword, a warmth I craved but couldn't touch, a reminder of a belonging I'd lost. The internal conflict was relentless, a tug-of-war between rage and longing that left me exhausted. Part of me wanted to scream at my family, to demand answers for why they'd abandoned me when I was already broken, to make them see the pain they'd caused. I'd draft long, furious emails in my head while pacing my tiny kitchen, imagining telling them how their judgment felt like a second divorce, how I deserved compassion, not exile. But another part of me ached to fix it, to swallow my pride and beg for their forgiveness, even if I didn't know what I'd done wrong. Was I the problem, too stubborn to fight for Sarah, too weak to hold my family together? Or were they the ones who'd failed me, clinging to outdated ideals of marriage over their own son's happiness? I wrestled with guilt, too, wondering if I'd burdened them with my mess, if I should have kept my struggles private instead of expecting their support. The divorce had already stripped me of my self-worth, leaving me questioning every choice I'd made, and their rejection amplified that doubt until I barely recognized myself. I felt unmoored, like a boat cut loose in the choppy waters of the Willamette, drifting with no harbor in sight. I tried to rebuild some semblance of a life, forcing myself out of the apartment even when every step felt heavy. I joined a local hiking group, more out of desperation than interest, trudging through muddy trails in Forest Park with strangers who didn't know my story, didn't see the cracks in my facade. I started volunteering at a community garden in North Portland, digging in the dirt on weekends, hoping the physical labor would quiet my mind, though the smell of damp earth often triggered memories of helping Dad with his backyard vegetable patch. These small acts were lifelines, tiny threads of connection in a world that felt so empty, but they couldn't fill the gaping hole my family had left. I'd come home to my silent apartment, the rain tapping against the windows, and feel the weight of being truly alone. No spouse, no parents, no sister, just me and the ghosts of a life I used to have. I wondered if this was it, if I'd spend the rest of my days as an outsider, invisible to the people who'd once defined my world, and the thought was suffocating, a quiet despair that settled into my bones. The unexpected twist came about a year after the divorce, on a chilly spring evening when I least expected it, and it turned my perspective upside down. I'd been invited to a casual get-together by a guy named Marcus, someone I'd met through the hiking group, at a little brew pub in Southeast Portland. I almost didn't go. Socializing felt like a chore, and I was in no mood to fake smiles. But something nudged me to show up, maybe the need to escape my own head for a few hours. Marcus was there with a small crew of friends, a mix of quirky, down-to-earth folks who welcomed me with easy laughs and no judgment. There was Lila, a tattooed barista with a sharp wit who'd escaped a toxic family herself. Javier, a quiet mechanic who'd lost his brother to addiction and understood grief in a way I hadn't expected. And Tara, a single mom and artist who radiated warmth despite her own struggles. They weren't polished or perfect, but they were real, sharing stories of their own scars over pints of local IPA. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of belonging, a sense that I wasn't invisible. What shocked me most was how they listened when I opened up about my divorce and my family's rejection, not with pity, but with empathy, offering nods and quiet affirmations that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't since everything fell apart. That night was a turning point, though I didn't realize it at first. Over the next few months, this ragtag group became my lifeline, a makeshift family I hadn't sought but desperately needed. Marcus invited me to weekly game nights at his cluttered loft, where we'd play board games and trash talk over cheap pizza, laughing until my sides hurt, a lightness I'd forgotten I could feel. Lila started dragging me to open mic nights at local coffee shops, where she'd read her raw, angry poetry about cutting ties with her past, inspiring me to sketch again, to pour my own pain into art I hadn't touched since the divorce. Javier and I bonded over long drives to hiking spots outside the city, sharing silences that felt comfortable, not heavy, as we navigated trails and our own personal losses. Tara, with her infectious optimism, would drop by with her daughter, Mia, to bake cookies in my tiny kitchen, turning my sterile apartment into a messy, joyful space for an afternoon. These weren't just friends. They were people who showed up, who didn't flinch at my baggage, who made me feel like I mattered when my own family had decided I didn't. The twist was that in losing everything, I'd found something better, a chosen family, built not on obligation but on genuine care, and it forced me to rethink what family even meant. But even with this newfound connection, the pain of my family's rejection hasn't vanished, and I'm still caught in an emotional tangle I don't know how to unravel. I've seen my parents once since that awful night, at a distant cousin's wedding last month, and it was like meeting strangers, polite nods, forced small talk, no mention of the rift between us. Jenna still hasn't reached out, and I've stopped expecting her to, though I miss her sharp humor, the way we used to finish each other's sentences. I drive past my childhood home sometimes, slowing down on those quiet Beaverton streets, staring at the porch where we'd sip lemonade on summer nights, and the nostalgia is a punch to the gut, a longing for a past I can't reclaim. I wonder if they think about me, if they regret their coldness, or if they've written me off for good. Part of me still craves their approval, their love, even as I build this new life with Marcus, Lila, and the others, a life that feels fuller, freer, but also incomplete without the roots I thought were mine forever. I'm torn between holding on to hope for reconciliation and letting go entirely, between honoring the family I was born into and fully embracing the one I've found. I've been reflecting a lot on my past, too, trying to understand why their rejection hit so hard, why I've struggled to move on even with this new support. Growing up, I was the easy kid, the one who didn't cause trouble, who followed the rules, who thought pleasing everyone was the key to being loved. Maybe that's why the divorce felt like such a personal failure, why their judgment felt like a verdict on my worth. I'd built my identity on being the good son, the stable one, and when that shattered, so did my sense of self. I've started journaling about it, sitting in my apartment as the rain streaks down the windows, sketching memories alongside my words. Dad's proud grin when I graduated college, Mom's hugs after a bad day, Jenna's teasing smirk. I'm trying to separate those good moments from the pain of now, to see if I can forgive them, or at least forgive myself for not being what they wanted. Portland's moody weather, its endless drizzle and rare bursts of sun, feels like a mirror to my own ups and downs, a city that's seen me at my lowest, but also witnessed my slow climb back to something like hope. My work has become a refuge, too, a way to channel the chaos into something tangible. I've taken on projects with local nonprofits, designing posters and logos for community events, and it's given me purpose, a reminder that I can create beauty even when I feel broken. I've started a personal art series, too, inspired by Lila's poetry, abstract pieces about loss and rebuilding, splashes of dark grays for the grief, bright yellows for the unexpected joy of my new friends. Some days, I feel like I'm healing, like this chosen family is enough, like I can let go of the blood ties that hurt me. I picture lazy Sundays with Marcus and the gang, grilling in someone's backyard, Mia giggling as we toss a frisbee, a scene so different from my childhood but just as warm. Other days, the doubt creeps in. Will this new family last, or am I just a temporary fixture in their lives, easily forgotten like I was with my own kin? I think about the future, about whether I'll ever hear from my parents or Jenna again, about whether I even want to, or if I'm better off building something entirely new, untainted by old wounds. I'm still wrestling with so many questions as I sit here now, in the dim light of my apartment, the distant sound of rain tapping against the roof, the faint glow of the city beyond my window on this quiet Portland night. How do you let go of the family you were born into when they've let go of you first, when every memory is a mix of love and pain? Can a chosen family, built from friendship and shared scars, ever truly replace the roots you've lost? Or will there always be a piece missing? And what about forgiveness? Do I owe it to my parents and sister to keep reaching out, or do I owe it to myself to walk away for good? I want to believe there's a future where I'm whole again, where I can look back on this chapter with peace instead of ache, where the laughter with my new friends drowns out the silence of my old life. Maybe that's what healing looks like, a patchwork of old hurts and new joys, a family not defined by blood, but by who stays when the rain falls hardest. I'm sharing this story with you because I'm still searching for answers, still navigating the messy terrain of loss, betrayal, and unexpected belonging that's reshaped my world. Have you ever been turned away by the people you thought would always be there? Felt the sting of family choosing judgment over love? How did you rebuild, find new connections? Or did you hold on to hope for reconciliation? Maybe you found a chosen family, too. People who became your home when your first one crumbled. How did you trust again? Build those bonds without fear of losing them. I'd love to hear your experiences, your insights, because I believe we can learn from each other's struggles and triumphs. As I look ahead, I'm left wondering if I can truly let go of my past, if this new family is my forever, or if some wounds never fully heal no matter how much love surrounds me. Thank you for listening to my journey, for being here through the heartbreak and the glimmers of hope. I'm eager for your advice as I try to figure out what comes next in this painful, messy, and maybe beautiful chapter of my life.